An NHL franchise's name and identity means absolutely everything. The name, colors, jersey, and overall feeling that fans will associate with their favorite team. As the new Utah Hockey Club is now finding out, getting this right is crucial. Today, we take a look at how other teams across the NHL approached this daunting challenge. This is how every NHL team got its name and identity. The Anaheim Ducks. The Mighty Ducks were classic Disney movies. If you're a 90s kid or early 2000s kid, you probably know that. Founded in 1993, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim were directly named after the team from the films. And until 2005, the NHL team and the movie Mighty Ducks shared a logo and colors too. When Disney, which not only produced the movies but owned the NHL team, sold the franchise in 2005, the name was shortened to Anaheim Ducks. Orange, which has become one of the team's primary colors, is a reference to Orange County, where Anaheim is located. The Arizona Coyotes. Yes, this team will be the Utah Hockey Club beginning in the 2024-25 season, with a name likely coming the year after. So for now, we'll include the Yotes on our list. When it came to naming Arizona's team, which was relocated from Winnipeg in 1996, there was a naming contest, with Coyotes beating out Scorpions amongst the finalists. Both Coyotes and Scorpions are inhabitants of the Arizona desert, and they wanted the team name to be an animal that was representative of the region. But what do you think the new name for this franchise should be in Utah? Popular suggestions so far include Yetis, Outlaws, Mammoth, Blizzard, Venom, Fury, and Ice. The Boston Bruins. The Bees' name doesn't have a clever origin. The original general manager, Art Ross, you may have heard of him, picked the name himself in 1924. A Bruin, an English folk term for a brown bear, is a ferocious animal and it's alliterative with Boston. So that was what Ross went with. As inconsequential as that sounds, the Bruins' black and gold color scheme does have an interesting backstory that dates back to their original owner, a supermarket chain owner named Charles Adams. Black and gold were the colors of Adams' supermarket chain, which made his hockey team's uniforms an opportune canvas to advertise on. It's what you had to do in the 1920s before advertising became what it is today. The Buffalo Sabres. Founded in 1970, the Buffalo Sabres were another to be named via a team naming contest. Sabres won, despite not having any direct connection to Buffalo. The team's original owners, the Knox brothers, wanted a name other than Bison, which they felt was a generic stock name used by Buffalo sports teams for decades. With names like Mugwumps, Buzzing Bees, and Flying Zeppelins being entered, the winning choice, Sabres, was picked because Seymour Knox felt a saber was a weapon carried by a leader and could be effective on both offense and defense. The Calgary Flames. Flames have nothing to do with Calgary. The name comes from the Atlanta Flames, which joined the NHL in 1972 before relocating to Calgary in 1980. Atlanta Flames was a Civil War reference to General Sherman's March to the Sea, during which much of the state of Georgia was set ablaze. The Calgary Flames, which kept the Atlanta Flames name, are the only NHL team whose name references another country's civil war. Their logo just switched from an A to a C, but the Atlanta logo can still be seen on the jersey of Calgary's alternate captains, the Carolina Hurricanes. When it was decided that the Hartford Whalers would move to Raleigh in 1997, there was no team naming contest. Team owner Peter Karmanos Jr. chose the name Hurricanes because of the many hurricanes that strike the North Carolina coast every year. This one was pretty on the nose. The team's third logo is literally the U.S. maritime warning flag for a hurricane. But did you know that they dropped the Whalers' green, blue, and silver for black and red in order to match the color scheme of the University of North Carolina Wolfpack? The Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks' original owner, Major Frederick McLaughlin, was a military man. During World War I, the 86th Infantry Division, which McLaughlin was a member of, was referred to as the Black Hawk Division. To honor his division, as well as a Chicago restaurant he had opened with the same name, again, cashing in on some extra advertising never hurt anyone, McLaughlin named his team the Blackhawks, with a space between the two words, in 1926. This was later shortened into a one-word team name, Blackhawks, in the 1980s. The Colorado Avalanche. When the Quebec Nordiques moved to Denver in 1995, they needed a new name. Colorado Nordiques just didn't make any sense. They almost chose Wranglers a few years before the Las Vegas Wranglers joined the East Coast Hockey League. Rockies was also already taken by Major League Baseball. Ownership eventually settled on Avalanche. Like with the Hurricanes in Carolina, there are often avalanches in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. The Columbus Blue Jackets. Before Columbus joined the NHL ahead of the 2000-2001 season, a team naming contest with over 14,000 entries was held. Blue Jackets was ultimately settled on due to Ohio's Civil War lineage. The state contributed more residents to the Union Army than any other state. Blue Jackets, based on the color jackets that Union soldiers wore, was a direct reference to this. Their logo features the Ohio flag wrapped around a star in a C shape, while Nationwide Arena's infamous cannon has become a symbol of the franchise as yet another war reference. In fact, the cannon is a replica 12-pounder Model 1857 Napoleon, which, as you guessed, was extensively employed in the American Civil War. The Dallas Stars. From 1967 to 93, this franchise was known as the Minnesota North Stars. When the team moved south to Texas in 1993, they simply dropped the North from the name, becoming the Dallas Stars, which fit perfectly as Texas is known as the Lone Star State. It couldn't have worked out any better. The Detroit Red Wings. Originally called the Detroit Falcons and Detroit Cougars, Detroit's NHL team was rebranded as the Red Wings in 1932. James Norris, who purchased the team, wanted to pay homage to an amateur club he played for in the 1890s called the Montreal Amateur Athletic Association, whose nickname was the Winged Wheelers. Red Wings is a derivative of the Winged Wheelers, who never played in the NHL, but won the first ever Stanley Cup in 1893. Since the 1930s, the original six team has hardly altered one of the unanimously agreed upon best logos and jersey designs in all of sports, the winged wheel. You also can't talk about Hockeytown without bringing up one of the strangest traditions in hockey, the octopus throw. In the 1952 playoffs, the owner of a local fish market, Peter Cusimano, threw one from the stands onto the ice. The 8 legs are symbolic of the 8 wins it took to win the Stanley Cup at the time. The Red Wings went on to sweep both of their opponents that year en route to a Stanley Cup championship. The tradition continues to this day, despite the lack of recent playoff appearances for the Red Wings. The Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers began as the Alberta Oilers in the WHA and kept their name when the NHL merger took place in 1979. They are the only WHA team to never be renamed or relocated. The Oilers were named after the Edmonton Oil Kings, a junior hockey franchise also owned by original Oilers owner Wild Bill Hunter. The name just makes sense. There are a lot of oil fields in northern Alberta. Calling Edmonton's team anything other than the Oilers just wouldn't fit the region. The Florida Panthers. When Florida joined the NHL in 1993, their owner, Wayne Huizenga, happened to be the co-owner of Blockbuster Video, a business that I'm sure is still thriving in the modern era, right? He wanted to raise awareness for the actual wildcat species of Florida panther, which at the time was endangered and sadly still is, although the hockey team is thriving as a powerhouse in today's NHL. We also have to mention the rat trick celebration. During the 1995-96 season, Scott Mellenby killed a rat in the locker room prior to the team's home opener with his hockey stick, then scored 2 goals with that same stick. By the time the Panthers reached the 1996 playoffs, thousands of plastic rats hit the ice after every Panthers goal, a tradition that continues to this day. The Los Angeles Kings. A team naming contest was held for LA, but team owner Jack Kent Cooke ultimately wanted his franchise to take on an air of royalty, so Kings was an obvious choice. Furthermore, Cooke also owned the NBA's Los Angeles Lakers and wanted his teams to share colors, so Kings also fit the purple and yellow color scheme, even though they now mainly rock black and silver. The Minnesota Wild. After a team naming contest, Minnesota settled on Wild, referring to the masses of woodlands and wildlife in the state of Minnesota. This was much to the chagrin of Paul Bunyan after Blue Ox was edged by Wild amongst the finalists. The Montreal Canadiens. In 1909, John Ambrose O'Brien created the Club de Hockey Canadien, which translated simply means Canadian Hockey Club. Today, the Canadiens are the only team that predates the NHL's founding in 1917. At the time, Montreal had many teams, often representing various neighborhoods within the city. The Irish neighborhood's team was the Shamrocks. The English neighborhood housed the Victorias. When the French area of the city got its own team, they went with Canadiens, an emphasis on the French spelling with an E instead of an A. Due to their immense on-ice success, the Canadiens were the only Montreal team to last past the 1930s, and now holds the record for most Stanley Cups won at 24. The Nashville Predators. In 1971 Nashville, a 9-inch fang belonging to a saber-toothed tiger was discovered during the construction of an office building. When the Predators joined the league in 1997, they already had chosen a logo to honor the fossil, but didn't have a team name. With the logo already decided, Nashville turned to a fan vote, with Predators being chosen over Fury, Attack, and Ice Tigers. The New Jersey Devils. When the Colorado Rockies, hockey team, not baseball, moved to New Jersey in 1982, the team owners instituted a team naming contest. Devils was chosen as a nod to the legend of the Jersey Devil, a local urban legend dating back centuries in which an actual supernatural devil roams the desolate pine barrens of southern New Jersey looking for victims to bedevil. Other finalists included Americans, Blades, Coastals, Colonials, Gulls, Jaguars, Meadowlanders, and Meadowlarks. The New York Islanders. When Long Island got an NHL team in 1972, they wanted to establish that they were Long Island's team and not just another New York City team. What better way is there to do that than call yourself the Islanders? The team was nearly named the Long Island Ducks after a local minor league team, which would have negated the Anaheim Ducks name from ever existing. The New York Rangers. The year before the Rangers were founded in 1926, a Prohibition-era bootlegger named George Tex Rickard purchased a Canadian team called the Hamilton Tigers and moved it to Madison Square Garden. Rickard renamed the NHL's Tigers as the New York Americans, who'd later disband during World War II. Hockey was such a hit in New York in its first year that Rickard wanted to add a second team a year later because the new team was purely his team and not one purchased from another owner. He came up with Rangers, as in Texas Rangers, a clever nod to the Texas Rangers baseball team. The Ottawa Senators. In hockey's early days, there was a team called the Ottawa Senators that won 11 Stanley Cups before relocating to St. Louis and going out of business during the Great Depression. When Ottawa finally got another team in 1991, they chose to honor the city's championship heritage. Besides, Ottawa is Canada's capital, so Senators is a very logical choice for the city home to the Senate of Canada. The Philadelphia Flyers. Before the city of brotherly love joined the NHL in 1967, they held a team naming contest. The winning submission, Flyers, was chosen by team owner Ed Snyder's sister. A flyer isn't actually a specific thing as much as the name was meant to embody the fast-moving, high-speed action of NHL hockey. The Pittsburgh Penguins. Carol McGregor, the wife of one of the franchise's part owners at the time, is reportedly the one responsible for the name. It was already decided that they wanted the name to start with a P to roll off the tongue when placed next to Pittsburgh. The team's arena, built a decade prior, had a giant white spherical roof and was nicknamed the Igloo. What made more sense than to have the Penguins play in the Igloo? The San Jose Sharks. A team naming contest was held, with Blades being selected as the winner. It was decided, however, that the Blades had an implied association with gang violence, so the name was scrapped. Sharks was chosen as a replacement due to the large volume of sharks that swim off the coast of Northern California. Besides the Blades and Sharks, other finalists included Rubber Puckies, Screaming Squids, Salty Dogs, Fog, Icebreakers, and Redwoods. The Seattle Kraken. The NHL's youngest team, at least aside from Utah, who have yet to play a game, joined the NHL for the 2021-22 season. The team's name comes from the mythical Kraken of Scandinavian folklore and its resemblance to the native giant Pacific octopus, which is found in the waters of the Puget Sound near Seattle. The logo was a callback to the S worn by the Seattle Metropolitans, while also appearing like the tentacle of a kraken. Meanwhile, their alternate logo represents an anchor combined with the Space Needle, the iconic observation tower in the city. The St. Louis Blues, the only NHL team named after a song. W.C. Handy composed the song St. Louis Blues in 1914, so when the team joined the NHL in 1967, referring to the franchise as the St. Louis Blues was a natural way for the team and city to be intertwined. Other team names under consideration were Mercury and Apollo, as the space capsules with those names were built in St. Louis. The Tampa Bay Lightning. The Tampa Bay area is considered the lightning capital of North America, the place where lightning strikes most often in the continent. Funnily enough, in 1990, there happened to be a thunderstorm in the area that inspired franchise president Phil Esposito to come up with the name, and he certainly struck gold. The Toronto Maple Leafs. This franchise had several names in its early years, existing as the Toronto St. Patricks throughout most of the 1920s after joining the NHL as the Toronto Arenas in 1917. When Conn Smythe bought the team in the late 1920s, he wanted a patriotic name to unite the city. Smythe fought in the Maple Leaf Regiment in World War I, so chose a team name to match. There was also a former Toronto hockey team called the East Maple Leafs. Interestingly enough, Maple Leaf wasn't even part of the Canadian flag until the mid-1960s, so the Toronto Maple Leafs team name actually predates the Maple Leafs' presence on the national flag. Too bad that nowadays the Leafs are characterized by Game 7 losses to the Bruins and the number 1967. Sorry Leafs fans, I couldn't resist. The Vancouver Canucks. Before Vancouver joined the NHL in 1970, there had been a long-running minor league team in the city called the Vancouver Canucks. Canuck is both slang for Canadian and a reference to Johnny Canuck, a Canadian political cartoon character in 1869. More famously, Johnny Canuck made a return as a comic book action hero during World War II, where his character fought Hitler. Johnny Canuck has been adopted unofficially by the Canucks as a second-team mascot and alternate logo. The Vegas Golden Knights. When Bill Foley revealed the name for the Las Vegas NHL expansion team, he said, quote, "My whole idea was to create a logo and a name that was powerful, that would epitomize the warrior class. The Knights are the epitome of the warrior class, the top of the line in terms of defending the realm, defending the unprotected. This is all part of the culture we want to create with the hockey team." Foley, a graduate from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, initially wanted to call his team the Black Knights, but a number of factors, including concern from U.S. government officials, slightly derailed that idea. Foley was also unable to call them just the Vegas Knights because the OHL's London Knights owned the Knights name in Canada. Golden was included in the name because gold is, as Foley stated, the #1 precious metal, and because Nevada is the largest gold-producing state in the U.S. The word "Las" was omitted from the team's name because, according to Foley, residents tend to refer to the city simply as Vegas, and because a 4-word name would have been too long. The Washington Capitals. Owner Abe Poulin decided on the obvious nickname Capitals after staging a Name the Team contest. His selection proved to be less controversial than the nickname for his NBA team at the time, the Bullets, who are now called the Wizards. The Winnipeg Jets. When the Atlanta Thrashers relocated to Winnipeg in 2011, they took on the name Jets after the NHL team that played in Winnipeg from 1979 to 1996. The original Winnipeg Jets were given their name by their owner, Ben Hatskin, who was reportedly a huge NFL New York Jets fan. The Jets first took the ice in 1972, right about the time that Joe Namath's Jets were one of football's hottest commodities. Likewise, Winnipeg serves as a primary hub for the Royal Canadian Air Force. But which of these team identity tales did you find most interesting? Do you wish any team went with a different name? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to click like if you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe for more NHL content. We'll see you in the next video.